Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 podcast. My name's Palm.
And I'm Andy.
And together, we are Chronopassion 7. Hello, and welcome to your favorite watch-related podcast. Today, we have another very special guest. What do you do when you're trying to reinvent a very historical brand steeped in tradition? Well, today we have someone here who's going to let us all know about that. We have Pascal Béchu, the managing director of Angelus. Hello, Pascal. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Pam. Hello, Andy. Very happy to be here with you this evening.
A warm welcome, Pascal, from my side. A pleasure to have you on the show. And the most important question, I believe, is what are you wearing today? What's on the wrist?
I'm lucky because I'm wearing one of our latest release, which is the Instrument de Vitesse, so speed instrument. It's a new chapter of the La Fabrique collection that we launched this year. Over the last few weeks, we launched two new limited editions, one in Silverstone Gray and Indianapolis Blue, and I'm wearing the blue version on my wrist. So that's a monopusher chronograph, really inspired by the old GT cars, and the speciality of this timepiece that it's a 1 minute chronograph only made to time the speed. So it's with a tachymeter around the minute track.
Wow, that's a great piece, a fascinating story behind it as well. So I think we'll revisit that watch a little bit later, but a very exciting piece.
Always with pleasure.
Andy, what have you got on your wrist? Are you going to surprise us with a new watch?
Not really, no. So for our regular listeners, I apologize. I'm very boring at the moment. I'm wearing the Rolex 1625 Chronograph, just for a change. Hasn't left my wrist since it came back from my watchmaker from a service. So it's a great little two-tone piece. Really, really enjoying it, to be honest, at the moment. Pops in all the right ways. Can dress it up, can dress it down. Just really, really enjoying it. And the 36mm form factor, for me, is extremely wearable. And I think Rolex do a nice trick with the lug shape where it just kind of feels a bit bigger than the actual size it is. So, yeah, very, very pleased with it. But, yeah, as you know, I can talk about this watch forever. So I'll stop and ask you, Palm, what's on the wrist?
Surprisingly, I've gotten Rolex as well. We have such a great independent brand on, like Angelus, and we've both gone mainstream Rolex. But today I have got the 116710 GMT Master 2, also known as the Batman. I mean, I was waxing lyrical about the Penguin show a little while ago, and I thought I'd put this on. But it's an amazing watch. I think it's the best looking watch that Rolex make. And the combination of black and blue for me is just right. The Pepsi is historic, but this to me is just a watch for all seasons. And that's what I've got on my wrist. Pascal, tell us a bit about yourself and what made you want to restart the Angelus brand. And I have an extra bonus little question on that as well. With it being such a historical brand, and now you've created the new modern version, there's a big gap in all the models, the records. How do you create that synergy between the two and fill the gap as well? So first about yourself, Pascal.
So first about myself. So it's now 25 years that I work in this beautiful industry. I came to watches not by accident. I was already a big fan of watches when I was 18 years old, looking for many beautiful watches, including obviously the one I could not pay for. But I think this came also as a passion for fine art and craftsmanship. I did my business school and my studies, always keeping in mind that I wanted to market and sell beautiful products with lots of craftsmanship behind that express beauty and heritage. After some first experience in the luxury industry, very quickly I moved to the watch industry and moved to Switzerland to live from this passion. I've been joining the Angelus team 4 years ago, first being on the sales part, traveling the world to promote the brand and set up the distribution for Angelus. Earlier this year in May, I've been appointed managing director. So now I'm together with my team at the helm of the brand. It's our passion to revive and put back this amazing brand at the forefront of the niche watchmaking.
Angelus, like I said, has so much history. And you have old Angelus, vintage Angelus, and you have modern Angelus, which you have now revived, as you said. And there's a gap in records between the two, from what I understand. I know you collect pieces, all the vintage pieces you can find, and you keep them in the Angelus manufacture. But how do you bridge that gap? How do you find out the full heritage, and how do you translate that into the modern watches that you create?
So maybe first time I will give a bit of history on perspective to our audience. Angelus has been founded in Switzerland, in Le Locle, in 1891, and it became immediately extremely famous for providing movement to other brands in the industry and also for its own collection. And the brand had continued activity till the late 70s. During that time, the brand became extremely famous, first of all, for its chronographs, of course, but also for some long power reserve movement, for its calendar watches, minute repeaters. And in the late 70s, the brand stopped production in what is known as, the Quartz Crisis in the Swiss watch industry. A few years after, in 2011, to be precise, the brand has been bought by the manufacturer La Joperet, which is the integrated manufacturer of Angelus and also of its sister brand, Arnold & Son. At that time, the management in place took the decision to focus on the tourbillon, which was a totally new complication in the world of Angelus, with extremely modern design, playing with titanium, with gold, with carbon fiber, carbon composite, always doing very small limited edition in quantities and very innovative and advanced tourbillon with a couple of different executions. Production of the brand at that time was around 70, 80 pieces per year maximum. And the first new Angelus launch has been in 2015 with the launch of the U10, which was known as the Tourbillon Lumière. And it was a very exciting timepiece at that time, which was in fact a tourbillon, but with the whole cage of the tourbillon that was like outside of the body of the timepiece that could be completely seen from a sapphire crystal all around the tourbillon. This masterpiece marks the relaunch of the modern Angelus. Another milestone in the story of the brand was 2022, when we launched at Watches and Wonders a new generation of chronographs. Our objective at that time was really to reconnect the brand with its prestigious past and especially with its specialty of manufacturing chronographs. And 2022 was the 80th anniversary of the Chronodate, which is probably one of the most well-known and legendary chronograph from Angelus that was launched for the first time in 1942. It was a chronograph with a very iconic design because it was the first production chronograph featuring a date and later featuring also a full calendar. And for the timepiece that we relaunched in 2022, we obviously based a lot of the identity of the timepiece from this historical timepiece from 1942. So you have a pointed date, for instance, so you read the date on the flange with the hand. You have a bicompax look of the chronograph with two very large register, which was also the identity of the original timepiece from 42. Remember, in the 40s, chronographs were in a much smaller size than what we have nowadays. And imagine at that time, the chronograph was 38 millimeter diameter, which was huge for that time. But that was made because
gigantic.
Yeah, because to give really very good legibility of the function of the chronograph on the timepiece. And of course, we added some other design elements like the font that we're using for the numerals that are applied on the dial. So all this was really what connected the new Chronodate to its illustrious ancestor. But of course, we wanted to connect to what was Angelus since 2011, 2015.
Yeah.
So we decided to do it with very modern material and very modern design. So that's why you have a timepiece which is fully made of titanium and carbon composite. The design of the case is very complex, putting together 11 different elements made of titanium grade 5 and carbon composite. And that has been the first new chronograph of the collection that has been launched in 2022. And then, of course, we kept also the tourbillon as an important pillar of the collection.
Sorry, I just asked you about the Chronodate.
Yeah.
The modern version, the pushers are very reminiscent. It's a Chronodate, obviously, it's a sports timing, sports watch, for timing cars. So the pushers, the start-stop, they have start-stop written on them. They look like paddles on a sports car. Is that what the intention was, to give it to that kind of modern sports car kind of look as well? Because it's a very traditional dial, but the actual case and the shape and everything about it is so very high-end sports car kind of look. Was that the aim when you made that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that was in the mind of our designer when they designed this new case. The objective, was to create a chronograph with purpose, like how it was made in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. Every chronograph was made for, it was named as tool chronograph. Every chronograph was made for sports, for a specific function. And definitely with the Chronodate, you have a lot of inspiration of modern sports car. I think you can see it very well on the side of the case, where you have those apertures from which you can see the carbon composite container that makes the inner part of the case. So no, you're totally right, Pam. That was definitely part of the inspiration on this piece.
For all the listeners, check out the show notes on our website at www.chronopassion7.com and just have a look at some of these images that we're going to put on there. It is very modern day sports car. It's just such a cool look. Looking at the dial, very traditional, and then you just see these modern. Is there any car in particular? Sorry, Andy, I know Andy's trying to ask a question here, but was there any car in particular that you had in mind? No. It kind of reminds you of a 911 a little bit, but a modern 911. But
with I would say more prominent, openings on the side where you could imagine that you have the wind flow that keeps the car, on the track. There was no particular car in mind, but it was an inspiration from a couple of different modern sports cars.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Pascal. I'll let Andy ask a question now. I think I went on for
no, it's so yeah, but it's fascinating, right? It's all about the guest. It's not about me. So, Pascal, with me being more a vintage fanatic, let's say, I'm big into vintage watches, as well as modern as well, but I always like a brand rich in heritage. And you did touch on it with the old 8-day movement. I think it was called the 240 SF. And if I remember correctly, you supplied this to Panerai.
Yes, it was an 8-day power reserve movement. Yeah, that has been provided to Panerai for their diving watches. The funny story about this movement is that Panerai equipped its diving watches initially with some Rolex movement, but the issue of the Rolex movement for a diving watch that was manual winding at that time, obviously, the power reserve was too low, and it meant that you had to rewind your timepiece too regularly, and this was damaging the gasket. So they decided to move to the Angelus movement that had the big advantage of having a 8 days power reserve. Actually, it was a certified 8 days power reserve, but the power reserve could even go up to 10 days.
Wow.
So it means that instead of rewinding your timepiece every 2 days, you only had to do it once a week. The gaskets were, of course, less used and wearing less. So that was the main reason why the Panerai decided to move to our movement that was at that time extremely well known and has been also used in its smaller version earlier by some other brands in the industry. Yeah.
Brilliant backstory with the movement. Just moving more to present day, do you think that's a part of your history you would like to revisit, and maybe, obviously it wouldn't be the same, but something you'd like to be creative around? Or could there ever be any kind of collaboration, do you think, with Panerai in the future? Or do you think that's just old history? The two brands are two separate entities? Or could there be something to maybe celebrate that?
Watchmaking has always been about collaborations, It can still be nowadays, and we see lots of collaboration between brands or even watchmakers collaborating with specialists from, even other industries. One interesting fact is that I think it was last year, Panerai made a unique piece in platinum that went for auction. I don't remember who was the auction house, but they decided for this unique piece to use a vintage Angelus movement in this unique piece Panerai in platinum. And this timepiece has been extremely well received because the hammer price was over $300,000 for this. So
Wow.
it means, of course, that Angelus movement and vintage Angelus movement were really recognized by collectors and watch aficionados as extremely well-known and recognized movement.
Yes, so maybe watch this space, never say never, right? So,
of course.
Yeah. And then another historic piece, which also you touched on, was, I think it's called the Tinker, the Repeater.
Yeah, the Tinkler. So that's a timepiece that has been launched in 1958. And that was a first in many ways. So this minute repeater was ringing on quarter hours. It was the first minute repeater automatic and water resistant. So that was really a very important milestone. And as I told you before, I mean, what we did in 2022 was to reconnect the brand with its legacy for chronographs. But as you could imagine, I mean, the history of Angelus is so rich that we would love to come in the future with, of course, other complications that are fully legitimate for the brand.
Brilliant. So that sounds, again, watch this space maybe, but not much more can be shared. That maybe takes me to my final or third question, let's say, in a quick flurry of questions, would be going back to the watch on your wrist, the Instrument de Vitesse, right?
Vitesse. Yeah.
That's it. Sorry,
Vitesse.
my French Vitesse. My pronunciation is terrible at times. But going back to that, I remember off there, you told me a fascinating story around the actual movement itself. Could you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So the speed instrument, the Instrument de Vitesse, is part of a new collection that we launched last year, which is called La Fabrique. So La Fabrique, it's the French for the manufacturer. And the idea is to come every year with a new chapter. So last year, it was the first limited edition of the 99 pieces in stainless steel of a medical chronograph, which is actually very faithful to an original medical chronograph that the brand had in 1962. So it was already at that time a monopusher chronograph with the pusher at 2 o'clock. And the specialty on this piece was that you had two scales for doctors. One was to calculate the rate of the pulsations, and the other one was to calculate the rate of your breathing. So that was the first chapter. And as I told you, this year we came with a new chapter, which is the speed instrument, Instrument de Vitesse. So now the purpose is moving from a doctor's watch to a chronograph for people passionate about car racing, and especially vintage GT cars. The design of the dial is directly inspired from the old dashboards of the GT cars. And you're right to say that this timepiece, as well as the medical chronograph, is equipped by a legendary movement. In fact, you have to go back in the 90s, where you had, at that time, 3 young and talented watchmakers who created a company that was called THA. Those three watchmakers were François-Paul Journe, Vianney Halter, and Denis Flageollet. And they were working for different brands and creating movements for different brands. So they worked for Van Cleef & Arpels, for Breguet, and they worked also for Cartier, in particular for the Tortue monopusher chronograph from the private collection. So they created this very iconic monopusher chronograph for this timepiece. The fact that Cartier relaunched this timepiece this year at Watches and Wonder is no coincidence. It was really one of the legendary timepieces from the 90s from the private collection of Cartier. And the fact is, those three gentlemen decided in the late 90s to stop their collaboration because each one wanted to launch its own watch brand. So François-Paul Journe created F.P Journe, Vianney Halter doing his own timepieces under his brand name, and you had Denis Flageollet who created the Bethune. At that moment, our manufacturer acquired the rights on the historical monopusher that we are now manufacturing ourselves in La Chaux-de-Fonds, which equips the first two chapters of the La Fabrique collections. One can say that it's a very iconic tool chronographs equipped by a legendary movement. I encourage the audience to have the opportunity to try on this piece at one of our authorized retailer, because the softness of the pusher and the precision of the pusher is just a demonstration of the quality of this caliber, which is obviously highly recognized by collectors.
Brilliant. Yeah, I remember when you were telling that story, like, so fascinating. And I think you took an excellent movement already and then just took it to that next level as well in quality and the finishing as well. So again, to just plug the website a little bit, go to www.chronopassion7, as in the number 7.com, where all the detailed pictures be there so the listeners can take a closer look at that historical movement and brilliant timepiece. So Palm, I'll bounce back to you.
I'm still blown away that the monopusher was Journe and Halter and the founder of de Bethune. Wow, what a combination of people. And there is a romance about the monopusher as well. It's just, there are chronographs, but when someone produces a monopusher, it kind of sparks something inside you, makes you sit up and makes you think, okay, now this is special. How has the reception been for that to date so far with your Instrument de Vitesse? And I'll ask you about the medical one afterwards, but yes. Just let's go back to the monopusher. I mean, it's just there's a romance around it. And how do you find that? Yeah,
I think what I love on this Instrument Vitesse is that we go back to the original form of the monopusher, where you had the pusher on the crown. What is stunning with this speed instrument also is that when you look at the timepiece, at first sight, you think it's just a regular hour and minute timepiece.
Yeah.
But the second is not moving. Then you realize that second can be activated on demand. And then after you see the tachymeter, and then you understand the full story and the purpose of this timepiece. We launched first at Watches and Wonders 2 limited edition of 25 pieces in stainless steel. The ivory color, which has been sold through, that's a timepiece actually that is a part of the finalist of the GPHD that will happen tomorrow in the chronograph category. And we had also a black dial that has been launched at that moment. So, response has been really excellent. Now we took advantage of Watch Time in New York earlier in October to launch the 2 new release, also 2 times 25 pieces limited, with the Silverstone Gray and the Indianapolis Blue. Demand is extremely good. We're going to be delivering in November the last pieces of the series, and the demand is high on those timepieces, and we are extremely happy to hear the comment and the interest of collectors for this timepiece.
Just very quickly.
Yeah,
sorry, Palm, I don't mean to jump in, but really quickly, just on the train of thought. What was the reason behind making it a limited edition? Just curiosity.
With Angelus, we have less than $30 worldwide. We have a production of less than 300 pieces per year. So we are extremely exclusive in our production. So instead of keeping the number of pieces open, we thought let's give it further added value with make them numbered. We believe it's the best promise we can do to our clients and to collectors, that they have something really unique. Instead of doing only one version limited to maybe 99 pieces or 100 pieces, in fact, we decided to split in 4 different executions because we had difficulties to make our mind on the colors and the various design we've been working on. So rather than doing only one style, let's split on 4 different color variations. Each one will have a different story to tell. It's the opportunity to play with different colors, and it adds up even to the exclusivity of this second chapter of the La Fabrique.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, talking of the colors, that Indianapolis blue, that is beautiful. Tell me a bit about what the inspiration was behind the styling of, why those colors. And we'll talk about the monopusher in a bit, but just that one in particular. I remember I've having seen these in London in person as well. It was just there's something very special about that color. What was your inspiration behind that?
Yeah, so on the first 2 versions, the ivory and the black version, we went on, I would say, easy picks. It was traditional colors.
Yeah.
But we wanted to spice up also those limited editions with a little touch of gold on the dial, with the hand on the indices. Blue is definitely a no-brainer color, especially if you had this additional color combination with the gold. The Silverstone gray was a bit more of a bet in terms of color, but it ended up with...
Did that represent the track? Was it because of the kind of grayish tarmac color?
Yes.
It's got that kind of a texture on it as well, like a track, a racing track.
The finishing of all the dials have this grain finishing that I think goes very well with the timepiece, especially if you refer to some vintage elements in the timepiece. You can project yourself in thinking about the asphalt, about the track. You could imagine also that after a long race, when the tire has been hitting the track for so long, you have also this kind of grain, finishing on it. It's all coming from there as an inspiration.
So going on to a watch which is completely different. Well, it's still racing inspired, but the Messina Lab collab you did, the medical watch, the medical chronograph.
Yes.
Now this is interesting because this is a watch for people who understand why this watch was made. Because I remember back in the day, it wasn't just myself, just people I used to speak to, before we really understood, this is going back years, what complications or why people did what with watches. And we were thinking, why would you make an automatic watch or mechanical watch tick when you can just get a quartz watch? And then I found out later that obviously it's the medical watch for a doctor to measure like you say, the heartbeat or the breaths. But then, of course, there were no quartz watches back then anyway. It was all mechanical or automatic. So again, this shows the kind of romantic journey you're going on with Angelus. What was your inspiration behind making that one? Because you don't see too many medical watches being made nowadays.
Well, I think on this piece, the model is directly inspired from a timepiece that we had in our collection, which was the medical chronograph from 1962.
Yeah.
This timepiece was extremely iconic because, as you mentioned, Pam, there were not so many brands at that time that were doing some doctors' chronographs, doctors' watches. Back in those days also, imagine doctors didn't have all the machines and the tools that they have at their disposal. So it
Yeah.
was really a tool chronograph. It was really a chronograph to help doctors in their everyday life. The reason of the monopusher also is quite important because, I mean, you could only have one hand to manipulate your chronograph because the other one, you should take the pulse of the patient. Yes, this chronograph is really an iconic model. Also a model that is still nowadays very much regarded by collectors. So very difficult to find this timepiece at auctions or on CPO market. That's the reason why we decided to go for this piece. And it's a statement. It's referring to an iconic timepiece from our archive. You had a couple of watches with the heartbeat, with the pulsometer, but not so many that could combine the different scales that were useful for a doctor. That was the reason behind this timepiece. The design is very faithful to the original. The two only modifications that we've made on the piece is that the original timepiece was, I think, 37 or 38 millimeter diameter. The new one is 39, which is a beautiful size nowadays, especially considering the very slimness of the caliber and the case. The fact that it has 1 millimeter extra makes also better legibility of the two scales on the dial. And the other modification that we've made is on the original timepiece, you had a azurite crystal, which in fact even had a magnifying glass that was glued on the azurite crystal. And on our current reedition, we decided to go with the sapphire crystal, of course. Nowadays, you must have a sapphire crystal. It's much more convenient, much stronger and reliable. And the fact that the timepiece was 1 millimeter wider in terms of diameter, there was no need to have this magnifying glass, which anyway is really a headache to do in sapphire crystal. And we wanted to keep the slimness of the current model.
So it's a real tip of the cap tribute to the older model. Yeah. And this could be the most important complication ever on a watch, really. If you think about it, it could save someone's life.
Of course.
For a doctor to
of course.
You can trace cars, you can, be so accurate with your time, but this is something very special.
And the funny story about this timepiece is that when I was promoting the timepiece with our retailer, very often I had the sales consultant that were telling me, I've been showing this timepiece to a doctor because for any reason, lots of doctors love watches. The sales consultant ended up, listening to the client explaining how to use the timepiece. And that's probably what created a special bond for many of the clients that purchased this timepiece with the function of the chronograph side. I don't have the full statistics, but I think the proportion of doctors that purchase this timepiece is quite high. The last time we met in London for the event, you just had a medical doctor that was attending the event that was picking his medical chronograph from Pietro. So you see.
Excellent. I remember. Yes, I do remember
and he
that.
came with friend who discovered the piece and said, "But I'm medical doctor as well. I would love to get one as well." So that's so you see, that's a niche.
Wow. Okay. They should make a boutique outside a hospital or something, and then you sell them all.
I don't know if they're wearing this timepiece every day, but I'm sure some of them. But I'm sure some of them do.
No, it's a special piece. But if you've made a watch that's dedicated to your trade, and they've obviously studied hard and saved lives and done, so it's not the easiest job in the world being a doctor, I'd imagine.
Doctor, you must be passionate about your work, and of course, if you have a timepiece that connects to your passion, I mean, I think it makes full sense.
Yeah, you have a chrono passion.
Yes, you have a chrono. You have a chrono passion. You're right.
Just need to sneak the 7.
And a 7, yeah.
Save 7 lives.
Yeah, save 7 lives. But that's been fascinating talking to you, Pascal, do you have any more questions, Andy? Or
Oh gosh, many burn. It just depends if we have the time to fit it all into this episode.
we've got time for one more. One more.
Okay, so my final question would just be, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but what I've seen with most iterations, what you bring, and we've touched on it a bit there as well, you definitely are creating a brand new path for Angelus. It's not, you're respecting the history, but you're not so much trying to recreate watches of the past. You may be using an essence of them, but you're not re-releasing historic watches. So it's, how do you find that balance? Is there a certain metric you use to try and, you want to pay homage to your roots, but at the same time you want to push the brand, as you say, to the modern era, using modern materials, fusing new concepts, like quite bold to start with a tourbillon, which didn't relate to the brand in the past as well. So just to summarize and to close up, just how do you do that delicate balance and not upset the fanatics from the historic pieces as well,
I think we get inspired by the founders, the Stolz brothers, that have been managing the brand for many years and on several generations. Because if you look at all the calibers and all the innovation that those gentlemen have brought to the watchmaking industry with their brand, they were not, bottom line, only specialists of chronograph or specialists of minute repeaters or specialists of calendar watches. They were innovators in the watch industry back in their days. And I think that's the main reason why when Angelus has been relaunched with very modern design, with tourbillon, with performance material, it was this idea and DNA of the brand that the new Angelus wanted to promote and to share with the customer. And I think we try to do the same nowadays with the new Chronodate, with our new tourbillon, but even with the La Fabrique, because the La Fabrique, as you mentioned very rightly, Andy, you have the medical chronograph, which is a direct tribute and reedition from an historical timepiece. But the Instrument de Vitesse, the speed instrument, is not relating to an existing timepiece from our archives. So we keep the liberty of sometime being very faithful to an original model, but sometime take some inspiration from the past and let's think, okay, if the brothers Stolz would have made a timepiece for car racing back in those days, how would it look, And we will keep doing the same in the future with chronographs, but also very soon, probably also with the new calibers that will enrich the collection.
Brilliant. So you stay faithful, but in really you're staying truly faithful to the DNA of the brand, and that DNA is innovation, pushing the boundaries, stepping out of the comfort zone and trying new concepts. So that's the Angelus of today. If they were still here today, that's what they would be doing anyhow. So yeah, I think that's a great summary. But fantastic. Yeah. So,
and a great way to end the show as well. Yeah, it's a shame that we can't speak to Pascal anymore. I remember when we met in London, we keep talking about this time we met, and it was really hard to stop talking to. It was just, I just sat there. I felt like I was interviewing him at the show. So that you have to come on the show, and you have such an infectious personality, Pascal. It's just lovely to talk to you. So we have to do it all over again, and we can talk about Arnold & Son perhaps next time.
Yes.
Any excuse to get you back on.
It will be my pleasure to join the next show to tell you more about Arnold & Son, but also speak about new chapters that will come with Angelus in the future. We really look forward to share with you more about what's going to come next with the brand.
That sounds perfect, and it sounds very exciting. So, Andy, lead us out.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I guess I have to close the show. Make sure to check out the show notes once again at the website, www.chronopassion7.com. for the best possible audio-visual experience. So you can listen along and see all of the great timepieces we're talking about throughout the show. So that is my sign-off. So it is adios and hasta luego from Barcelona, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.
And as Andy says, farewell from Spain. Pascal, would you like to say goodbye to the listeners? Any message you want to give to them?
I mean, I hope you discovered a lot on Angelus, that you could feel the passion that we've been sharing with Pam and Andy on the brand, and I hope to be able to share more, and please refer to the beautiful content that Pam and Andy will be sharing on their website, so you will have also the picture of the timepieces that we've been talking about.
Yeah, check out the website. And so, as Pascal says, farewell from Switzerland. Check out Angelus Watches online as well. And from London, it's Toodle Pip and laters, and we'll see you, and you'll hear us in the next one.